I just want to say that as a comedian, I was very offended that the other comedians said certain words that I don't like. Really? Are you sure you're a comedian? Because you sound more like a concerned citizen to me right now. What's up, everybody? Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. So I wanted to take some time out to talk about the fact that this whole situation with Shane Gillis, and then there's been the Louis C.K., and then there's been Dave Chappelle, and then there's been Bill Burr, and it just seems like there's always something that people are offended about, which I don't have a problem with the general public being offended because people are allowed to feel how they want to feel, and when it comes to audience, it's almost the point of the exercise. It's like pushing the envelope is a part of stand-up comedy. As much as people will try to tell you, oh, it's really not a part of it. You're just supposed to make people laugh. No, you make people laugh at things that they're not supposed to laugh at in some cases. Then there are some comedians that are just for the sake of fun. They're appreciated too. But I don't know a lot of actual comedians that are offended by a lot of things. So when I see these articles, like there was one in Variety the other day, and I'm not going to call out a name because this isn't about any one person. This isn't about my own personal vendetta against anybody, because to tell you the truth, I've been through it with certain people, and even those people, I don't hold anything against them because I feel like in a lot of cases they're just misguided and they're identifying the wrong way. In a lot of cases, what I've noticed is that the people that will get called out in these magazines and online publications, that they'll be like, this person is a comedian, I'll actually know that person and I'll be like, that person really isn't a comedian. They're more of an open micer, which there's nothing wrong with being an open micer, but at the same time, it's like you're not actually working. You're not actually doing the job, because I don't know a lot of comedians that have a lot of time to dedicate to that kind of stuff. Because as a comedian, usually what you're trying to do is you're trying to get booked, you're trying to make sure you stay paid, you're trying to make sure that certain gigs that you book don't fall through, because that's something that a lot of us deal with as comedians. Like, the things that offend me would be more like somebody not making good on a check, or somebody not paying me what they said they were going to pay me, or somebody trying to short me on a hotel room, or like, these are the kinds of things that I usually worry about as a comedian. These are the kinds of things that are a concern for me. And I'll have some people talk shit about that, and they'll be like, well, you're on the road all the time, so you don't understand. I don't understand what? I don't understand what it's like to be an outraged open micer in LA, because I was in LA for a long time. I did comedy in LA. And it's one of the reasons that I got tired of LA, was because LA turned into not so much about comedy, but about people that were calling themselves comedians, when really all they were trying to do was have excuses to have PBRs with real comedians. Because what a lot of these people don't realize is the people that you're hanging out with that are making you feel like you're a comedian because you're hanging out with these people have been my friends for years. And you don't see us arguing online because we realize that we're all in the same struggle. It's at different levels in a lot of cases, but we're all in the same struggle. We're all just trying to make sure that everything continues to go, because it is hard to make money. So when I even talk about open micers, I'm not trying to disparage anybody. If you're on open mics and you're working hard, I look at you as a comedian the same as the rest of us. But if all you're doing is going to an open mic maybe once a week, and then the rest of the time you spend on Facebook talking about how outraged you are because as a feminist this person said this, or as a person of color that person said that. Like, when I first started doing comedy, it was very accepted for people to be homophobic towards me. It was very accepted for people to say things off color when it came to my race, me being Mexican. Even the fact that I look Asian, it was a regular thing for the host to wipe the mic off after I got off stage, and the whole audience would laugh at it. And I have like a bunch of tapes of this, and I'll end up posting a montage at some point of just host after host. It was so hack that they just kept wiping the mic after I got off stage, and the whole audience would laugh because I had my gay mouth next to the mic, and now this person had to wipe it off for maybe the AIDS, or maybe what I had been doing before the show. And I used to just laugh it off. People would say homophobic things. The one in particular, I could name the comic's name, but I'm not going to. But he got on stage after me and he was like, oh, so you're just gonna be gay like that? Oh, he's just gonna be gay like that. And the audience got a chuckle out of it, but I think it drove it home for people. The first time I ever did the Comedy Store, again, I could name the comedian, but I'm not going to. There was a host that after I got off stage, and at the time I had my lip pierced, and he was like, ugh, he's a faggot? That's disgusting. He's a faggot. Did you see he had the lip ring in his mouth? And then he was like, some of these faggots have their nipples pierced. I wish somebody would rip that nipple ring out and just make that motherfucker bleed out. And the audience was laughing like this was the funniest joke ever. And I had just finished getting off stage for my first time at the Comedy Store, and I had bombed. I admit, I had bombed. And now I'm having to listen to this person talk about how disgusting I am for being gay. But at that time, there were no blogs like there are now. And I'm very thankful for that, because maybe I would have fallen into that trap and wanted people to feel bad for me. At that time, there was nobody I could tell that kind of thing. This was back in like 2003. Queer Eye was just starting to be a thing on TV. You know, there was a lot that was starting to happen, but people definitely weren't to the point of political correctness that they're at now. And I just remember that I would get bullied at certain mics, and I'm not being a crybaby, because to me, these things made me stronger. So when I tell you these stories, I'm not telling you in a way like, oh, you should feel bad for me, I've been through so much. But I do feel like, especially other people in the LGBT community or people of color, should have a certain amount of respect for what it is that I had to go through when I was coming up. And when I give advice, I'm not doing it to be mean to you. I'm not trying to take your voice away. I'm just saying there's a more effective way to use your voice. Because what I would do at that time, and this is where a lot of my early act came from, if you ever see one of my first sets, you'll notice that a lot of it comes from things that people would say to me that I thought were either offensive or I just got tired of answering, or common questions people had for me. And I would get offended inside of myself, and then I'd go home at the end of the night and I'd just write. And there was a point where I was living in my Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I'd go do as many open mics as I could do. And in some cases that would be like 3, 5. There used to be a lot more places that you can just sign up in LA and then go on. And so I was able to maximize and do as many sets as possible. Sometimes I'd do 7 to 10 in a night, because I had stage fright and I wanted to get rid of it. So I was also dealing with that at the same time. And like I said, it was cool for people to be not politically correct, and I guess you could say mean to me. I would just take all of that and I would put it in my notebook, and I'd put punchlines on it. That way I could say it on stage and I could shame these people without ever using their names and get big laughs. And the same people that would bully me would have to be in the room at the same time, because they'd be waiting for their turn, and they'd have to watch me killing it off of things that they had said to me to be offensive. And I remember there were times when I felt like not doing stand-up anymore, you know, at the beginning. I knew I wasn't going to quit, but I did feel like maybe this just isn't worth it. Maybe I don't need the headache of it. But I just kept showing up, and I just kept doing my stuff, and I just kept writing. And there was a time when I went up, the first time I ever went up at the Ha Ha Cafe, which was probably 2004, something like that. It was when I was still brand new. I remember that Rick Gutierrez, a comedian that was a lot more seasoned than I was and trying to give me advice, told me that he didn't like that I always held on to the mic stand, and he felt like it was a crutch. So he was like, I want you to, after you do your first joke, you walk to the back of the stage, you put the mic stand in the back of the stage, and then you come back out and you just stand on your own. You don't lean on the mic stand. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do like Rick said. So I did some joke where I told the audience I was gay. This is no exaggeration, no lie. It's a full room at the Ha Ha Cafe. This is like the old location, and before they did the change to the layout at the old location. So I'm at vintage Ha Ha Cafe. I say that I'm gay, and that used to get a decent reaction at most places I would go. But this is like their Latino night, which would be like Latino and black audience mostly. And so I said that I was gay. I walk to the back of the stage to put the mic stand at the back of the stage. I turn around and everybody has left the room. There are 2 people there. And yeah, I was traumatized. I really was traumatized because those 2 people were trying to be as nice as possible. They were a couple. They were a Latino couple. But yeah, I like, you know, I grew from that experience. And all the stuff that happened to me in the beginning, I grew from. And so I can't say that I respect it when now people are so offended that they don't do stand-up. You know, they're like, well, I'm just going to stay home and write blogs and still say I'm a comedian. And it's like, yeah, at this point you just do an open mic a week so that you can continue to say that you're a comedian. And nobody needs you wasting time like that. Like, you're a waste of your own time at that point because you're not trying to get anywhere. You're not trying to get ahead. If you're trying to get ahead in stand-up, instead of writing on Facebook about how offended you are, keep that to yourself and instead put a punchline on it and take it to the next open mic that you do. And if it doesn't work there, change it and take it to the next open mic you do. And keep doing it until it's actually funny. That's what being a comedian is about. Being a comedian isn't about being mentioned in Variety online as a comedian when anybody that knows stand-up in your city knows that you're not an actual comedian. And I don't say this to be mean and I don't say it to be aggressive. I say it because it's true. Because you're hurting stand-up. Like, you're hurting stand-up. When you say Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr or Louis C.K. or any of them are hurting stand-up, no. Actually, whether you like their jokes or not, whether you like what they did or not, because I'm critical of certain things. I'll mention that I didn't like certain things as a comedian. But it's like, if I think something's lazy, I'll mention that. If I don't think something's that clever, I'll mention that. But I'm not mentioning it like, oh, you shouldn't talk about this subject when you're on stage. To me, that's what's hurting comedy, is when we try to limit people's speech because we don't like what it is they're saying. And it's not war on political correctness that I'm having here, because political correctness has its place too. If you want to do stand up from a politically correct standpoint and you can make that funny, by all means do that. I'll laugh at it like anybody else. I'm not trying to limit your speech either. I'm just saying that in order for it to be comedy and in order for you to be a comedian, you got to put a punchline on it, or else you're not a comedian. And you need to stop lying to online magazines and saying that you're a comedian. That's the way I feel about it. And this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.